Hello, thanks for joining us. Well, as you can see from my background, it's dark over here in North London, and it appears to be somewhat brighter in the next panel there, which is where Sarah Armstrong-Smith is located, and that's over to the west of England. But I would like to welcome you wherever you are, and this is a North London and Central London branch of BCS. My name is Darren. I am the chairman of those two groups, great body of people. And my colleague, David Grundy, is here as well. The technical aspects and the questions and answers, to make sure they all feed to our great presenter, Sarah, who is with us now. And she's going to be starting in just a minute. And this session, as you know, is the third one by Sarah. She's already done a women's inspiration session. She did a ransomware, fabulous. And now this is about emails. Now, who uses emails? Hey, wait a minute, who doesn't use emails? And I think most of us here, of course, use emails. There is still a significant percentage of our population that doesn't. But people who do have the great pleasure of facing all sorts of risks as well, don't we? And phishing is one of those big features of our world today. Emails have become fishy business. And I'm going to ask Sarah to tell us more about email compromise and business email. Over to you, Sarah.
Thank you, Darren. So, hi everybody. I'm absolutely delighted to be with you again today. So, I'm going to be talking all about phishing and also business email compromise with regards to what's going on, what's the current state of the world. So, just to introduce myself, so I'm a Chief Security Advisor. I work with strategic and major customers across Europe. And that's from a number of perspectives. That's with regards to understanding what's going on with regards to cloud adoption, digital transformation, and obviously what's keeping them up at night when we talk about cyber security. So if you heard me talking last month on ransomware, I gave a few fun facts about Microsoft and our infrastructure and the threat intelligence. Now, since then, Microsoft has actually issued our latest digital defense report. That was issued earlier this month, and it's quite significant with regards to just the state of cybercrime, what's been going on. But if you did listen to me last month, you may have heard me talking about the fact that every single day, Microsoft collects, processes and analyzes over 8 trillion signals. Now, as you can see, that number has actually risen to 24 trillion. Now, that's a sign of the times with regards to the global pandemic and just what's been going on over the last 18 months. We've seen a significant shift to the cloud, multiple cloud applications, multiple devices, but also on top of that, we've also seen a lot more with regards to that interface with the IT and OT world. So actually those number of telemetry signals are growing exponentially. And I just think it's frightening, I think, really, when you think about 24 trillion signals a day and just how that's growing. So how do we make sense of all of those things? Well, we use a lot of machine learning capability with analytics. We have over 8,500 people dedicated to security. And this is a mix of analysts, data scientists, product engineers, but also we have researchers, we have law enforcement, all of those type of things. And it's really about understanding what's new, what's different, what's going on. And that's really what I'm going to be talking about today, is really kind of delving deeper with regards to the phishing email and business email compromise. Now you can kind of see some of the stats here as well with regards to just over that last year, over that last period, we have blocked 9 billion endpoint threats, 31 billion identity threats have been blocked, and 32 billion suspicious emails. So really, as you can sort of see, there's a lot of information that's all coming together, and it's really about trying to understand what's new, what's different, how are their attackers really evolving their tactics and techniques. So last month we really delved into ransomware, but actually the vast majority of attacks, so over 70% of cyber attacks, start with some kind of phishing email sort of compromise, and I'm going to go into that a little bit more. But just beforehand, and again, if you joined me last month, you would have heard me talking about one of our teams, which is the Digital Crimes Unit. So this team, if you like, is unique to Microsoft, and they sit in the background and they're looking at how can we disrupt criminal infrastructure and the associates that are coming together to organize crime and those type of things. So it is a mixture of that technology, it's deep forensics, and it's really looking at where we can take civil action with regards to some of the legal takedowns and the legal instruments that we have in our ability to be able to take control and disrupt the criminal networks. Now, Microsoft actually relies on some old laws, if believe it or not. So we have law enforcement that operates across the globe, and they're really looking at across all these different entities and different jurisdictions what laws are available that enable us to be able to file civil actions with regards, and it's mainly around property. So when you think about the operating systems, the software, the cloud, the copyright of a lot of those things, the trademarks of Microsoft, our logos, and those type of things, we fiercely protect that. So really what we're trying to do is when they're used maliciously, when they're used for fraudulent activity or to launch cyber attacks, then they will take action in that regard. So some of the key areas of focus where we're going to be reflecting on is obviously business email compromise, and I'm going to come back to that. But also with regards to malicious use of Azure. So this is where the cyber criminals are actually utilizing Azure itself to build maybe servers, to launch attacks and those type of things. Also with regards to malware, deconstructing malware, we're really trying to understand what's new, what's different. Most malware is normally a variant of what we've seen before, and we're obviously working to automatically block known threats. But the cyber criminals, they just have to evolve a little bit more with regards to the type of malware and what they're doing. And obviously last month we had a deep dive in ransomware, but we do also spend a lot of time actually liaising with our other tech service providers, so like Google, Facebook, Twitter, for example, and we're really looking at that kind of how do we impact on child exploitation. And one of the things I'm going to be talking a little bit around is again about that tech support fraud and just how the cyber criminals are utilizing fake domains to be able to get people to give up their credentials and do those type of things. But to kind of kick things off, really where I want to go next is I want to give you some stats which is quite interesting from the FBI. Now, the FBI have the Internet Crime Complaint Center. Now, what you'll see here is it took them 7 years to recruit their first 1 million complaints. It took them 14 months to go between 5 million and 6 million. So as you can kind of see, that rise in internet-based crime is again growing exponentially. And in 2020 in particular, most of the crime that was reported tended to be around business email compromise, romance scams, but also investment fraud as well. And the impact of that crime is also on the rise. And I was kind of going to be digging down into a little bit more in terms of what we're seeing from a Microsoft perspective. Now, when we do that trace back over the last year, what we sort of see is a consistent number of phishing emails. And those phishing emails do a number of different things. Either they have URLs which will take you to a fake domain, or they'll have attachments which will obviously launch malware into the background, and that's from a different number of perspectives with regards to what they're doing and how they're doing it. Now, the number of phishing related emails, as you see, has been quite consistent across the last year, roughly around 600 million a month, with regards to just those number of type of attacks. Now, you'll see, and one of the things I'm going to be going to is that the cyber criminals are really reacting to the news of the day and trying to get people to react with regards to what's going on. So what you'll see in the first graph there is actually in November is normally Thanksgiving in the USA. So around about this time, the cyber criminals will start to have a lot more increase in their type of attacks of what they're doing. You'll then see there's a lull with regards to in December, and they tend to go a bit quieter with around that time. So you'd think they'd be on the increase with regards around Christmas and those type of things, but actually it kind of goes up and down depending on what is going on. Now, the malware is actually really interesting because, as you can see, it's actually been on a downward trajectory with regards to the number of phishing attacks which have got malware within them. Now, you could argue with regards to, is it easier to collect credentials through fake URLs as opposed to trying to get people to open attachments or those type of things? Well, another things I'm going to be talking about, as I said, is around Microsoft, where they've taken a number of action. So one of the most prevalent malware campaigns that have been utilized is TrickBots, which is actually a Trojan. It's being utilized a lot in banking, and it's there to collect information with regards to users and those type of things. So earlier in sort of July, August time, Microsoft did a mass takedown of the TrickBot infrastructure globally. And since then, you sort of saw there was a peak going in August where it was really being used quite prevalent again with regards to an increase in COVID-19 related attacks. But as soon as we took that TrickBot infrastructure down, the malware campaigns went down with it. So it could just be a sign of the times with regards to the use of malware, but certainly it's still prevalent with regards to what they're doing. Now, arguably, to release malware into the environment doesn't require as much user interaction. So they don't really need to fool people into tricking them to go to fake domains or this kind of time is of the essence thing that they're used to doing. So they're actually utilizing, just normal looking attachments. So one of the things that they've started to use in particular is password protected documents, zip files, and those type of things. And where it's password protected, it kind of evades security scanning technology with regards to looking to see if there's any malware in the attachment, and doing that kind of remote detonation of some of the malware that's done in advance depending on what kind of technology you're utilizing. And again, so to kind of fool the person into opening the attachment, they'll actually include the password in the email itself. And this will just look like a random document, doesn't look particularly harmless, the way the email's worded, but they're just trying to find ways and means around our detections and the education that we're telling people with regards to things to look for. I know, don't open attachments and those type of things, but actually they put a password on it, as I say, it evades that kind of detection. So most verticals, the most high impacting areas tend to be around the kind of supply chain threat. So where you have masses of emails potentially going in and out of organizations and those type of things. We've seen a big increase specifically targeting education, particularly around where more school children operating remotely. They're utilising their own devices or their parents' devices. They may not have the same level of security, so they've suddenly got access to multiple endpoints. And arguably, education facilities, particularly schools, don't have the same level of security when it comes to corporate or private sector institutions. So they potentially are starting their campaigns with regards to lower level education, those type of things, as a means of collecting credentials. So it's something to be mindful of with regards to just the type of organizations that they're going after and why. So in terms of some of the techniques that we've seen with regards to what they're doing, so Nobelium is actually the threat actor behind the Solarwinds attack. Now, Solarwinds is actually the most sophisticated attack we have ever seen. Just with regards to the persistence, the patience, just how far they were willing to go in terms of infiltrating into multiples of different organizations to do that, to collect information and those type of things. So now they're adjusting their campaign. So they're looking at not just infiltrating into individual emails, but how they can infiltrate an entire email service. And they can then send out mass communications, email marketing solutions, and that kind of thing. And they can do mass broadcasts out to legitimate emails, in essence. So it's just something, so they're escalating with regards to what they're trying to do and how they're trying to do it. So within some of the nation state attackers in particular, they're very well resourced with regards to what they can do, how they can do it, how they can switch tactics to a certain extent with what they're doing, and how they can build these campaigns and build them at scale as well. So some of the other things that we've started to see, so if we start on the left-hand side here, so again, we're used to telling users what to look for in emails with regards to not clicking links and those type of things. So again, they're switching tactics. So they will utilize contact forms. So you might be maybe, you know, a complaint, give us feedback, you know, book for your a table at a restaurant, these type of things where you can actually put information into an email. Again, through social media contacts, we might be getting people to send us messages, and those messages will again pretend to do something legitimate, and they're trying to get people to go to fake links, open attachments, and to kind of do the same kind of phishing campaigns that we're used to seeing in email, but from a different perspective. So I think when we're talking about comms and marketing and these different types of facilities that capture this information, it's about increasing that education much wider with regards to all incoming communication, and again, just being mindful of the fact that you know, again, they're kind of praying to this, trying to get people to take action. So this one here is pretending that someone has infringed their copyright with regards to pictures that have been taken, and they said, oh no, please go to this site and you'll see all of the copyright infringement. And there's still a threat there that we see quite a lot with phishing campaigns. Well, they use some kind of power of persuasion, and I'll come back to that. So there's a threat there with regards to, if you don't take action, I'm going to sue you, and that kind of thing. It's just a ruse to try and get people to go to these, which might look like a, you know, just a normal URL, attachments, these type of things, but potentially it's being used to launch malware or to collect credentials in a similar sort of way. The other interesting thing that we're seeing as well with regards, particularly with business email compromise, and again, we tell users to think about checking for unsolicited emails. If you weren't expecting to receive an email from somebody, to be suspicious of it. So when they're actually getting access into the emails, they are actually putting fake replies on the bottom of them. Now, if this person is used to receiving lots of different emails in and out and those type of things, they might have thought, oh, maybe I just forgot about the fact I'd received this email. I've obviously replied to this person, so I can look back through the email chain and I can see that I've been communicating with this person. So then when I get a follow-up email, or looks to be a follow-up email from this person that then starts to ask me to take some kind of action, I'm probably more likely to take notice of it, as opposed to this unsolicited email, because it's not unsolicited. I've obviously responded to them before, but it's all fake. They've it's just everything that kind of goes behind that is how actually being manually created. Now, one of the biggest scams that we're seeing is regards to gift cards, and we're seeing this quite a lot. So we're used to kind of seeing this kind of threat that goes into making people fear factor, if you like. So they're changing rules to kind of do something nice. So, you know, it's someone's birthday, someone's ill, I'd like to get them a gift card, you know, to show my appreciation. Then they'll pretend they can't get access to their email or their site's down. You know, can you purchase a couple of these gift cards? And then normally what they'll do is ask you to actually read the code, or send the code back to them, and they'll obviously be pretending they're going to reimburse you, put it through expenses and those type of things. And this could be for a relatively small amount, so it could be £50, £100, and you might think, well, that's not too much money. Actually, it's a really nice thing for us to do if someone's sick. Again, particularly if we're thinking about someone who's been off sick with COVID, or their family, and they're having to take time off work, or those type of things. But we're seeing a lot more of them just taking more time and attention to build a backstory behind it, and then also thinking about who is it they're trying to target and why. So it's just, you can kind of sort of seeing they're evolving with regards to what they're doing and how they're doing it. Now, the tactics vary with regards to what they're trying to do and the stages they go through, if you like. So there's kind of some common themes, and we'll go through some of this in a bit more detail. But it's kind of like there's that initial collection. They're trying to, they might have purchased some email addresses off the dark web, some compromised accounts. They'll do scraping. They're doing their reconnaissance on specific targets. So when we're thinking about, you know, how do they get my email address in the first place? So some of it comes from different perspectives. They then have to come up with some rules or some law which is going to get you to take action. So this is kind of can be a current event, that kind of fake reply that we talked about, the impersonation of somebody within the organization, or they're trying to pretend to be maybe somebody in accounts or someone like that. And we'll go into that impersonation a little bit more when we go deeper into business email compromise. You then have to kind of look at how far they're willing to go with regards to the sending of the infrastructure, creating the spoofing, the encoding messages, and embedding invisible characters. And really what they're trying to do is make the incoming email look as real as possible, either in terms of the brand name, the email address, the way in which the logos in the emails potentially are shown. So it used to be that we say, oh, look for grammar, poor spelling mistakes, you know, those type of things. But they're getting wise to that. So they're sort of taking their time with what they're doing. And then they're kind of like, okay, so how are they then detonating the next part? So that can either be through a file, attachment, or those type of things, or then there's a number of links that then take you to those capture forms. It can be fake domains, but even with regards to giving your permission for applications and those type of things, particularly in devices which might be collecting information in the background. And I'll give you an example of that. So let's look at a normal phishing email, if you like, just in terms of what's kind of typical of what we see. So that before you've even got the email, as we said, there's been some kind of setup or infrastructure in the background. So they've had to set up fake domains or compromise legitimate sites and those type of things, and they send out their malicious messages. Now this could just be random to a group of mailboxes, ones that they've collected from the dark web, or they bought them, or they could be very targeted to very specific people in your organization. And then they kind of have to entice the person to taking some kind of action, as we sort of said, and taking them, pressing a URL, opening an attachment, or they're doing those type of things. Then they're obviously then trying to collect those credentials or downloading malware. But it is kind of then what happens next with regards to either how they're utilizing the credentials, or then how they utilize the malware to open a backdoor access into the network or into the environment. And a lot of this is then utilized for subsequent attacks. So as we talked about specifically with ransomware, getting that backdoor access into the network, or they could literally be utilizing this company as a way of just collecting more credentials, maybe for utilizing password sprays, again, selling those credentials on the dark web or whatever they're doing with them. So they'd like to mimic popular brands. So one of the biggest spoof brands tends to be the cloud applications and those providers. So the type of accounts or services that people have started to utilize, and they'll mimic better known brands, I think, because they then trust those brands with what they're doing, and they're more likely to put those credentials in. So you'll see Dropbox, Google, Gmail, all of these type of things, Office 365, and it's just a way of that from the user's perspective, the initial sign and the pages are designed to look almost identical to the real thing. So for how would you know the difference really with regards to what's going on? But they're then collecting the credentials, and then sometimes they will actually then pass the person over to the legitimate site in the background. So they're taking you to a fake Office 365 account. You put your credentials in, thinking it's legitimate, to reset your password, whatever the case may be, and then it will actually auto forward you on to the real Office 365 environment. And it may actually ask you to put your credentials in again. And it might just be that you just thought, oh, maybe it's not working quite right, I'll just enter them again. But again, this is just that kind of that ruse that they're doing to fool people into thinking they've gone to the legitimate site, and almost kind of use that. They're trying to kind of go behind the scenes to collect this information without you even realizing it, and then they'll go on to their next port of call, if you like, in terms of what they're doing and how they're doing it. Now, as we said, the cyber criminals absolutely love a crisis. And we sort of said they follow the news of the day, if you like, in terms of what they're doing and how they're doing it. Now, back in June last year, Microsoft Threat Intelligence team did a look back over the last 3 months, particularly in the UK, the USA, and also the Republic of Korea. And they started tracking what was going on in the news at the time, and where we started to see increases of COVID-19 related phishing laws. So this could be fake domains, it could be text messages, it could be all sorts of things that were going on. So if we start in February, and again, this is about the UK. So the first cases of COVID started to become visible in the UK. At that point, the World Health Organization had not declared COVID-19 as a pandemic. But as you sort of say, then we go into March, when we start to see the first recorded death The pandemic is escalating across multiple different countries, and it's this point that the World Health Organization does finally declare COVID as a global pandemic. And it's at that point when we started to see a crash on the FTSE, and then lots of communications coming out of the government. Then we then had to go into lockdown, and the US declared a no-fly travel ban into Europe. Now you can see as those kind of big news stories started to come out, we started a lot more increase in those COVID-related phishing laws. But it started to come down as we started to come out of lockdown. But actually when the Prime Minister was taken into hospital, into intensive care, there was obviously a lot of concern, a lot of stories again into the news with regards to COVID, what's going on, and those type of things. So you can see the kind of peaks and troughs of what's going on. And then we started to see we were getting into a routine with regards to lockdown, what's going on, having daily briefs, and it's bringing on a lot more of this into the attention of the public with what's going on. And we started to see it level out, but actually it started to increase again. As soon as we started to have the vaccines that were coming out, again, there was kind of that those promises of jumping the queue and being able to get access to vaccines quicker and those type of things. But in essence, what is going on? But why are people falling foul to these type of attacks, these type of laws and these type of things? Well, it really is utilizing the power of persuasion. There is a psychology behind what they're doing, and they're preying to the fear factor, but they're also preying to a number of things which are going on. So the reciprocity really is about you getting something back in return. So they might be giving you a discount code, they might be giving you access to services earlier, so you feel that by going to, by taking action, you're going to get some kind of immediate benefit, which is for you in particular. So the scarcity is really that kind of, as we sort of say, that time is of the essence. You must react now. This is a one-time offer. It's only valid until the end of the week, those type of things. And again, it's that kind of that fear factor, which is making you feel a bit anxious with regards to taking that action. So the authority is really used a lot with regards to business email compromise. So if you feel like you're getting an instruction or an email from somebody in authority, so a CEO, your superior, they're telling you to do something and they're telling you quite succinctly what to do, are you going to challenge that authority? The other thing that they'll then try and do as well is they might again take some kind of fear factor into the equation by threatening some kind of disciplinary if you don't take action, or you don't do these type of things. So the consistency is really about them coming back and being consistent in their messaging and what they're doing. So it might be the fact that you've had an email, you've had a text message sort of offering you this thing or saying it's time is of the essence, and they might come back and say the offer has been extended, or you really have to take action now. As we sort of said, if you don't take action, you've probably sort of seen these messages which is around you're going to get prosecuted, or you're going to get some kind of disciplinary, we're going to tell your manager, it's going to be recorded on your HR file, those type of things. So the liking is very much around, particularly around social media. So if your Facebook account, Twitter, those type of things has been attacked, you've got a lot of friends, a lot of family, and if you have a message which is coming through someone you think's your friend or family, again, you're more likely to take action as a result of that. So if they kind of send you a funny cat video, or something silly, or say that they're doing donations for a friend's birthday party or something like that, then again you're more likely to not even think twice maybe about it, because it's from a friend, it's from someone, it's a loved one or someone you like, in essence. So the consensus is it really, again, it's preying to those kind of news stories, those big news stories. It's particularly with regards to if we start to see things that are coming through sort of campaigns that are raising money for people. So this can be charities, it can be these sort of campaigns where, again, they might pretend that someone's lost their job, they've got a sick child, and they're raising funds to try and get them into hospital, or, you know, get extra care. And again, it's just a ruse to try and get people to take action. So sometimes the ruse is doing something nice and positive, and sometimes the ruse is about the fear factor. But it's that there is a psychology behind why they're doing what they're doing, and it's a kind of, then, you know, even when you think about how many people have said, oh, I can't believe I fell for this scam, I can't believe I clicked the link, why wasn't I thinking? But that is why these things are designed to do what they do. So this is why we have to think about, you know, how they're changing those tactics and techniques, because they are so successful with regards to what they're doing and how they're doing it, and they only need a few to slip through the net in terms of, you know, collecting those credentials, or then doing the second stage of their attack. So how did Microsoft react to what was going on? So at this time, so Microsoft actually took civil action in terms of taking down a number of fake domains that had been set up. Now, this particular ruse was done over 62 countries, so it was very well organized. And what they were doing, again, was contacting people, and with pretending that they were going to get access to a bonus. They were going to receive something positive. As you can imagine, people would be very excited about getting this news and some help and assistance with this kind of getting some money. Now, the thing that was slightly different with this particular ruse was, instead of actually collecting credentials, they were actually utilizing an app, or a fake app, to get that person to give them permission to collect information in the background. Now, what you'll see there at the left of the screen, again, is that's kind of pretending that this person was actually accessing a Microsoft 365 account, taken into this application. Now, what we've seen with a number of cloud applications in particular is people don't necessarily know what they're signing up to or what they're consenting to. So this is consent phishing. So they're not willingly giving up their credentials. A lot of that information is actually being collated through consent. So you should kind of see here that it's actually giving permission to read your contacts, to sign in, read your profile, read your email, read all your OneNote notebooks, read and write your mailbox settings, and give full access to your files. Now, you can imagine just I sort of say just how much access that would have given the people. So not only do they have to rely on your credentials anymore, they've got access to a huge raft of information. So actually, Microsoft would put a court order in to take control of all of these fake domains that were being utilized to launch the attacks, and they simultaneously did a mass takedown of all of the malicious applications that were being utilized at the same time. Now, because this was done across 62 countries simultaneously, as you can imagine, it was a huge coordinated fraudulent effort by the criminals operating across that scale. So it actually generated quite a lot of media interest. But this again is just how the digital crimes unit is kind of taking that action in the background, particularly with this particular, because they were utilizing a fake Microsoft application, an Office 365, to be able to collect a lot of this information fraudulently. We were able to step in and take action in that regard. Now, what are they doing? So we sort of said, okay, they're collecting this information, they're doing this malware, what next? So what are they doing with those stolen credentials, in essence? So they can be doing it for a number of purposes. Now, some of this is because they're trying to get access into your actual environment. but they're creating those backdoors. They can sell access on. So one of the things that we talked about in the last session was about, we have the kind of ransomware as a service where they actually outsource parts of the attack. So part of the initial attack can be then outsourcing the collation of these compromised credentials. And they kind of rank them in essence about who are the credentials, what do they get access to, and they kind of rank them then in terms of the victim, the company, the industry, even the location. So there might be that certain attackers are trying to attack entities in the USA, the UK, or whatever the case may be. So then they're looking at, okay, so as we sort of said, maybe this gives you access to schools, or it gives you access to a sports centre. Quite low level credentials, but they can sell those at mass and they can go as low as $1. So obviously the more they can get into different accounts, so they might use these kind of password sprays, they might brute force entry into different accounts, and they're elevating upwards in the same way. So if they can get access utilizing the same credentials into bank accounts, retail, some of those may have your home address in them. They might then have bank accounts attached to them. They might even have some of your security questions, and they can just start collecting more and more information. And this information is really valuable for doing second stage attacks, particularly in terms of those impersonation attacks. So the more they can learn about you or their victim, and they can kind of then spin this ruse together with regards to building that trust network in terms of what they're doing. But they also then, in terms of, you know, they might look at the types of passwords that are being utilized. And again, what is being utilized? So people might go, oh, the World Cup's on, I'm going to have my favorite football team is England or Spain, or whoever my favorite player is, or anything like that. I might just use a themed password or something like that. So they might go, actually, World Cup is coming up, and we've had the Olympics and those type of things. So they might start to actually do password sprays on those type, or a combination of those type of attacks. Well, they'll start to utilize, you know, just those type of things that are going on. So hopefully I'm not scaring you too much here, but the top cybercrime is actually business email compromise. Now, this is probably the most financially impacting cybercrime of all. Now, you might be thinking that's ransomware, but actually there's a lot of effort that goes into ransomware attacks, and obviously there is no guarantee that that you're going to actually pay the ransom. So the way in which they're actually utilizing, they're trying to get access into your environment by utilizing, you know, imposter syndrome with regards to then getting access into the environment. And I'm going to give you some examples, and I think some of the examples are quite eye-watering with regards to what they're doing. But the business email compromise in particular is getting more sophisticated, as we were sort of talking about, with what they're doing and how they're doing it, the targeting, the lengths they'll go to in terms of doing that impersonation, building up that trust, and those type of things. Now, the FBI in particular have sort of said that this is the #1 biggest impacting cybercrime from a financial perspective, but just in terms of how they can infiltrate into that environment. So what do they do? So there's different types of attacks with regards to what they're doing and how they're doing it. So it's some kind of a single stage attack, really, is where they're pretending to be, they've already got access into the environment. They will then just ask for a simple request of this person, and it's really just trying to get them to do something. But actually, there's looking behind it, they're then looking at various different things of what they're doing. So from a trying to make that email look as real and as possible. but actually they're doing a number of things in the background. So they're actually utilizing that user impersonation. So the display name looks correct, but actually the username might have a slight variant in it with regards to an extra letter or a slight variant in the person's name. The second thing then is they impersonate the domain it's coming from by actually swapping out letters and those type of things. So they might, so if we looked at this example, Contoso, and so they replace the O with a 0. We see this a lot with Microsoft in particular, and it's called a homoglyph with regards to what they're doing and how they're doing it. The third part is actually an exact domain spoofing. Now, one of the things that we talk about with regards to making sure that you apply a digital signature to your domain, so it's the person receiving the email knows that it's actually really come from Microsoft in terms of the capability that's put into the background with regards to those digital signatures. Now, if that is not enabled, then the attacker can actually completely spoof the environment, but that can be launched from the attacker's own email servers. And again, it looks like the actual email address, but the actual sender of it can be slightly different with regards to what they're doing. So this in essence is a first stage, single stage attack where they literally are just asking for a simple request in essence. But as you can see, they've automatically gone to some length with regards to how they're spoofing or impersonating the user or the domain that they're coming from. So within this type of thing, so again, we've done another mass takedown, and this was in Microsoft earlier this year. Now this actually started with a complaint that was made on a business email compromise. But when Microsoft did their investigations, they actually noticed this particular attacker had created 17 separate domains and homoglyph domains. So this is pretending, as I sort of said, to be Microsoft, but creating one separate letter and those type of things. And in this scenario, they were only one letter out with regards to their impersonation of the sender. So this was actually an extensive network that was being utilized from West Africa, and again, acting across multiple jurisdictions, trying to get access into the environment. And what they were doing was monitoring accounts, gathering intelligence with the objective of then implementing a secondary attack with being able to transfer funds. But it was 17 separate fake domains of different companies. And we had it with Microsoft actually again got a court order that required all of the domain registrars to disable all of those domains in essence. And again, that was through a court order with regards to that initial complaint that was made to Microsoft with regards to one of the fake domains that had been set up. Now, how this is utilized is in a multi-stage attack. So this is where they're then going to the effort of trying to then do a secondary stage. So at this point, they have already pretended they're the CEO, a person in authority. They've got access into the environment. What this secondary part of the attack then does is the monitoring of that person, that legitimate person's email account. So they start to put some auto forwarding rules in place, and they could be against some keywords, but they're looking at the relationships, they're looking at phrases, they're looking at how you might normally talk to somebody. Is it informal? Is it formal? They'll look at your calendar, looking at upcoming business trips, maybe discussions that are going on around business deals, wire transfers, and those type of things. So when they've got to a certain stage with regards to understanding the relationship, what's going on, and those type of things, they will then start to intercept a genuine conversation or relationship. And they'll craft it to look like it's in the middle of a genuine email conversation or exchange. Now what they will then do is actually swap out a genuine email or a genuine invoice for a fraudulent one. So they might then just kind of spoof an invoice, change the bank account details or whatever they might do to then entice that person to then pay the fake invoice. But for the recipient, they think it's genuine with regards to what they're going. They've had these conversations. It's a genuine relationship. But this is just really how far they're going with regards to this. So to counteract this auto forwarding, Microsoft has actually completely disabled by default the auto forwarding rule in all Office 365 accounts. So this actually then requires someone with administrative control to actually amend policy. So if they wanted to put in this auto forwarding rule for some specific rule users for genuine requirements, they can do that, and they can do that for some specific users. But just in terms of then stopping that initial attack with regards to that auto forwarding, that is something that Microsoft has done across all accounts and retrospectively to previous Office 365 accounts as well. Now, one of the biggest scams, I think this might be the biggest business email compromise scam in history so far. Now, if you think if someone like Facebook and Google can fall for some kind of business email compromise, what hope is there for the rest of us? So this was, again, it's a scam that started actually way back in 2013, and it went on for a couple of years. Now this was a fake company that was set up in Latvia called Quanta Computer. Now Quanta Computer is actually a real company. They are a real hardware supplier that was supplying a lot of services to both of these organizations. Now, it is actually really difficult to just to be able to set up a company with the same name as Microsoft. You know, there are a number of rules and copyrights, trademarking, and those type of things. But if you were to do this in countries that may not have the same kind of laws, hence why they set this company up in Latvia. But they didn't just set a company up, they actually went into opening bank accounts in the company's name. So they opened the accounts up in Latvia and in Cyprus. And then they went on to create a whole backstory with creating forged invoices, contracts, letters, pretending that they were signed by executives. So they were then able to intercept into conversations, real invoices that were going on with the legitimate company and with Facebook and Google. And then because they were pretending to be these companies, they then had to then obviously not just put in a fake invoice, but have all this backstory that was going on as well. So they even went to the depths of creating false corporate stamps that they could give to the banks to legitimize why they were suddenly getting big transactions that were going on. And this, so this was all about trying to legitimize what was going on. So this person was actually extradited from Lithuania in 2017, and then they stood trial in the USA with regards to these frauds that were going on, and then they were sentenced to 5 years in prison. Some of the money is still outstanding. So not only did they set up the fake accounts in Latvia and Cyprus, but when these fake invoices were being paid, they moved the money very quickly. So this is more accounts that were set up behind it. Again, in Latvia, Cyprus, Lithuania, Hungary, and Hong Kong. as well. So it was quite an elaborate ruse that went on to creating a number of the kind of information that went into the background to try and legitimize a lot of these things that were going on. As you can see, that was for a lot of money, what was going on. Now, I believe the companies themselves have been able to get back some of this money, but there is actually some of the money still outstanding as well. So part of the court order that's been put onto this individual is to try and collate that money back as well. I'd be like, I'm not sure how they're going to do that, but that is one of the things that has been put on onto this particular person with what they're doing. Now, here's another example, again, that was Microsoft was actually involved with. Now, this is a case of a Nigerian national. He's a millionaire. Now, he was actually named in the Forbes 30 under 30 list for being an entrepreneur. But he was actually leading a double life, and he was masquerading behind a number of significant scams and business email compromise attacks. So he was actually arrested while he was in the USA. So he was actually targeting a specific company called Unitrack, which is a holding company that was being utilized to do export sales on behalf of Caterpillar. So again, creating these big invoices that wouldn't have come surprise to the customers of the organization because of these big construction projects that would have been going on. So again, it's the masquerading, it's the impersonation of the executives, trying to get them to do these wire transfers up to $11 million. But there were other victims that were also identified as part of this ruse at the same time. And this person was actually put to prison for 10 years. So you can see that it's quite hard, it's quite difficult, you know, when you're trying to bring these cases together, that you know, a lot of the companies that are affected in one country, the perpetrators are in other countries, are moving money around. So actually to bring a lot of these cases to court and those type of things is incredibly difficult, but they do happen, you know, with what's going on and what they're trying to do. So it really does require a lot of public and private cooperation between a lot of these entities, and we're starting to see with like the FBI, Interpol, a number of different agencies that are coming together. So you've got the National Cybersecurity Centre in the UK and a lot of these different things. And it's really about tracking those networks, those criminal enterprises, looking through the banking infrastructure, the digital infrastructure. What are they doing? How are they doing it? How are they moving their money? How are they creating these fake domains? How are they infiltrating the companies, and the lengths that they're going to with regards to what they're doing and how they're doing it. So what can we do? So this, as we sort of said, the attackers are evolving their tactics and their techniques. And again, there's a level of persistence and patience, learning about their victims, their who's who, trying to bring these ruses, these backstories. And it's all about building that trust network with regards to what's going on. So the simplest things are it still comes down to that hygiene that we talk a lot about. And actually the single biggest thing, and you'll hear us talking about this over and over again, is multi-factor authentication. So if they cannot get access to those credentials, they can't use them, they can't access into the environment to do those second stage attacks. So MFA actually stops a huge number of those secondary attacks and even those compromised credentials from being utilized. But then we have to think about the principles of least privilege in terms of what they're doing, how they're doing it, and making sure that we're up to date with those malware detections, and also ultimately protecting the data with what they're trying to get access to. It all kind of comes down to what we might call those basic fundamental hygiene tasks that we speak a lot about. So it's at this point we haven't even got into the realms of some of the more defensive security technologies that we can utilize. At this point, it's still just really thinking about that, the antivirus, multi-factor authentication, and really keeping ourselves up to date with those updates as much as possible. But then how do we protect from those malicious emails? So we've talked about the MFA, that we really have to be thinking about the robustness of our education and reinforcing the positive side of that education, where people have identified, they have taken action, they have questioned the legitimacy of these emails. But as we sort of said, we have to think about much wider to all incoming communications. So this can be, as we sort of said, marketing, people, and all of those things. So any which way in these comms are coming through. But in the email itself, there are then things that we can do with regards to flagging emails from external users, highlighting to people that this is an email from someone you've not received an email before. And again, it's just kind of looking at getting someone to take notice with regards to where the emails are coming from. But about creating and enforcing those finance policies are really important. Again, it's about that authentication, that kind of just to stop, take action. Can somebody really authorize a transaction for multiple millions or change a bank account just on the say-so of an email? So again, it's looking at that kind of segregation of duty, that kind of getting the users or changing the process, which just looks at that multiple factors authentication. So actually, we do not just accept the fact that you've given us an email. We don't accept that someone is just telling us to take that action. We have to go through separate steps to legitimize that transaction. And if it's genuine and bona fide, then you would expect that people would understand that it's all about protecting the data to stop fraud and those type of things. So in terms of protecting domains, legitimacy of the domains, it's really important that those emails have got those digital signatures signed and verified. And we're taking advantage of any advanced protections that may be built in to the email environment or some of the security technologies that you're potentially utilize. I'm going to give you some examples, and I know I'm Microsoft, I'm not trying to sell you any services, but I just want to give you some insight with regards to some of the capabilities that are available, and some of which that we've actually been investing in as well. Some of that advanced protection, so some of the things that we've had is about account guard protection, and we have, again, we were really concerned with regards to some of the attacks that were happening about frontline services, particularly with regards to hospitals, care facilities, not-for-profits and those type of things. So we actually enabled the Microsoft Account Guard for Healthcare for free at no cost to health guard providers, but other companies can actually sign up. And this is really about getting insight based on our threat intelligence, where we are actively tracking known nation state attackers and getting advanced notifications of verifiable threats of compromise. And a lot of this, again, with nation states in particular, that they're looking at the espionage, they're collecting information, and it's really about then looking at where they're spoofing registered or individuals' Hotmail or Outlook accounts and those type of things. And other organizations can actually participate in the account guard protection, and this can actually extend outwards into the company's individuals, so their personal accounts as well, because the personal accounts of some of these individuals can also be attacked. And it's just then, but it relies on consent of the actual person to authorize that this account guard is in place, and to have that monitoring that's going on. So again, it's about protecting the privacy, but it's really drawing in on being proactive with regards, as I say, specifically from some of the nation state attackers. So where we've then got into Microsoft 365 is multi-layered protection with regards to a number of the type of attacks and those type of things. And this is coming at all different angles. So you might have already know about sort of safe links, safe attachments, where they're detonated. So if someone does inadvertently click a link or open an attachment, it's actually opened up in a sandbox area, so it's checked, or it's verified, or we can prove that it's actually it's got some kind of malware, and it might not even reach the user. It might have actually been detonated in the background. New capability that's actually being created is regards to sender intelligence, with regards to checking for spoof domains and looking for that impersonation of the users and those type of things. So how that actually works is, in essence, we're utilizing machine learning capability to learn about the users. And it's really again, it's about those relationships, their email habits, who their contacts are, and what is normal kind of what is normal activity, if you like, for this particular user with regards to their contacts and those type of things. And this just can be indicative of when that user is being impersonated, or if something has got access into that account, or we're starting to see those kind of spoof things that are going on. With regards to then setting our view on priority accounts and that ability to then start to correlate information together. Now, we might start to see campaigns that are coming in across multiple people into the organization. We might kind of say some of these people are high profile targets for attack. So it could be, you know, people in seniority, the CEO, even people in HR who've got access to highly sensitive personal data. And we might want to start flagging these up for additional control measures, or flagging that to our security operations team when we start to see any anomalous activity that's going in those environments. So this is just some additional capability that's just been launched, which enables that proactive investigation and hunting capability with regards to looking at those suspicious attempts that are going on. Now, if I just kind of go into this one, we can kind of sort of see, now, has this, so if someone's got an email with regards to a surprise gift or those type of things, quite unusual. Some other things that might be coming in could be about, you know, urgent invoices, call me, do this, take this activity. And this is kind of just come to start a flag as to we need to investigate this. So we can start to look at this, we'll actually have impersonated users. We can start actually delving deeper into those suspicious domains and what's going on with regards to the type of attacks that are coming through. The other thing that we can then start doing in terms of that response is to start taking automated playbooks and automated activity based on the policies that you've got and what's going on. So just to kind of give you an example here, so this is about multiple emails that have come into the organization, and it's triggered some kind of weaponized URL that's in the email. Some of those have then, the users have taken some activity, they clicked a link. We've seen a number of threats with regards to compromised emails, compromised users. Maybe some of that is through malware and those type of things. And then it's looking at the remediation that's happened. So we've automatically blocked the URL, we've deleted the email before it's even hit some of the users. We've forced a password reset, and we've also enabled multi-factor authentication. So this is stuff that, as I was going to say, can be automated, and it can be down to your policy. Similarly, again, it can set an alert off to your security operations center for them to then launch an investigation, or for them to take some kind of action. But you might then want to start quarantining devices, quarantining the users, or doing some kind of activity that's going on there. So really then what we're trying to do is take all this information together and run these kind of simulated attacks against the end user environment. And it's not about catching people out. It's really about just getting them used to understanding, do they kind of see these type of emails? What do they do with them? Why did they take specific action? But actually, it's been proven that year on year, by doing these type of attack simulators and those type of things, that it does actually ultimately reduce these type of phishing attacks. Now we know, as we as we talked about, you know, the attackers are evolving with what they're doing. So we want to be as dynamic as possible. We can't just wait until the next time we do one of these simulations or training exercises. We have to keep making sure that we're doing real-time activity. We're looking actively for this anomalous behavior, and we're backtracking with regards to these personal accounts, impersonation, spoof domains, you know, all of the things that they're now trying to do to fool people into taking action. So just to kind of close quickly before I take questions. So we talked a lot about companies, but obviously there's education for people and in their personal life as well, with regards to things that they can be doing, things they can be thinking about. So it's that kind of that verification that they won't have the same technology that is available necessarily to some corporate enterprises, but it's really just that verification about that unsolicited emails and calls, making sure that whatever device that they're utilizing that anti-malware, they're making sure they're doing that update. And where is possible, now we know people are creatures of habit with regards to the accounts that they utilize, the passwords that they're utilizing. So as much as possible, again, we want to reinforce, use a password manager if it's available, and use the built-in authentication that's now available in so many different devices, or that's available through different accounts. But it's also just to be aware, again, from fraudulent activity, identity theft, and how their own personal credentials might be getting utilized, is to make sure that they're aware of how they can actually look up themselves and how they can be aware. So there's a number of different things available with regards to how they can check their own email addresses and how they can just double check for their own compromised passwords as well. And again, a lot of devices will have this kind of capability built in. Now, the more easy to guess the email address, the more likely that is going to be used in a campaign. So I've just got sarah@hotmail.com. Now, are you going to say that's a very, very popular email address, no doubt. Now, something that easy to guess is going to be utilized multiple times over, and me just putting in a surname, something else, it makes that more complex. It's less likely to have been compromised. But it's a similar again in devices with regards to, you know, just being mindful with regards to some of the actions that you're automatically being told with regards to the reuse of password. Is this a breached password? Is this password easy to guess? And then putting those detections in place with regards to notifications where you've got those breached passwords and those type of things. So, well, that was a lot to go through. I'm sure there are lots of questions, and I'm going to invite those questions now, David. So hopefully we haven't panicked people too much about what's new and what's going on. But yes, please, let's have those questions, please.
Okay, we've got a few questions. Thanks for that, Sarah. That was really good. So the first question is from Bernard. Is there a way for an ordinary Windows user to start a bit of tracing of the source of the fraudulent email?
It really depends on the type of capability that you have available. So it's a lot of the technology that we've talked about is at the corporate enterprise level. Now, there are built-in capabilities that users of corporates can do in terms of their ability to take action and report phishing emails and do those type of things. But a lot of this comes down to the capability that is part of the license, but also the administrative controls that have been put in place within the organization in terms of turning things on and off, with regards to the type of capability, the type of automated blocking, the type of policies that are being built in. So it's a multifaceted answer, really, and it really, as I sort of say, I hate to say it, but it depends. As I said, it really depends on the capability that you've bought and the capability is actually being implemented, because we actually find that even if a lot of companies have the full capability, they haven't actually enabled that capability. So if I just give you an example, only 20% of the companies that have MFA have MFA capability have actually turned it on. Now, I know it's not a case of just turn it on. There's a lot of things that have to go into the background through sort of policies and alerting, automation, making sure that we've got the right capability in the background to look at these type of threats and what's going on. But it's just to kind of sort of say that there is potentially a lot of capability that is available, but you just got to take advantage really of what's going on. Now, one of the things I will do, when we have the recording that goes out on YouTube, I'm going to include a couple of links to the Microsoft site, which actually just explains what kind of capability is built into some of the things that people can take advantage of. So one of the things that a normal user person with a normal Outlook account or can actually now take the password off their account, so they can actually go passwordless. They can enforce that multi-factor authentication. So there are some actions that individuals can take if they've got an Outlook account or whatever the case may be, but a lot of the technology, as I said, and the capabilities at that enterprise level.
Okay, the next question is from Jamie, and it's quite long. If you remember the type of scary adverts the government used to put on the TV in the 70s and 80s for both kids and adults, do you think the government needs to do more on impactful cybersecurity messaging for the general public? It still feels very light touch and security starts at home.
Very much so, very much so. I mean, as I sort of said, one of the things that we said was that one of the highest impacted sectors is in the education sector. Now, the fact that they're able to target and even do some of these social engineering techniques on children, and children are very trusting, and they obviously wouldn't know that someone is trying to get access to their information. They're collecting information about their parents potentially, or just trying to get access to them as individuals. So 100%, we have to do better at education, and education across all different sectors, because we still got this misconception, I think, that that the attackers are just after the banks, they're after the kind of the big companies. That is not the case at all. They're attacking the small companies, attacking individuals, attacking big enterprises, because if there is any way that they can monetize what they're doing or even sell that information, so it's either that they're trying to do fraudulent activity themselves, or as we sort of said, they can sell that quite easily on the dark web, or just a number of different things that they're doing. And I think we've kind of gone past this, the initial training that, as I said, we were doing with regards to phishing is, look for spelling mistakes, look for grammar, and these kind of things that look so obvious when we think about them now. We have to go to the next level of education, which is, as we sort of said, is the amount of effort, the time that they're taking, and for the average person to be able to know the difference of what a fake domain looks like, that someone's been impersonated, to really question a CEO, to do these type of things, you're asking a lot of people. So that's why we have to really assume compromise at every single thing to a certain extent that we're doing. And we don't like to think about the fact that people are attacking hospitals, attacking charities, they're attacking schools. They're trying to get access to children through gaming sites, through social media, you know, any which way in they will take advantage of. And this is the thing, therefore, that we have to do. You're quite. We have to do better education, but the government also has to help with that. I think the National Cybersecurity Centre, they are trying to do more, but I think we have to kind of collectively come together and really kind of think about how we can help educate our employees, our customers, our partners, and how we can kind of come together and really think about that enablement and that security awareness end to end, because any chink in that kind of supply chain is really where they're looking for that weakest link, if you like.
Okay, the next question is from Stephen. To what extent does the company culture play a part in users falling for fake emails?
Very big, very big. And I think it's the fear factor that comes into it as well. So I've seen some companies who refer to people that click links as repeat offenders. So it's almost criminalizing the person, and it's making them look like they're the ones in the wrong. But as we sort of said, you know, there's a psychology behind it. They're going to a lot of effort to either try and build trust with the individual, to impersonate somebody, to do all these fake domains, all of these type of things. So we can't just sit here and blame the users or, you know, give them these kind of titles. Now, if these people are in fear, and if they feel like they're going to be disciplined, they're going to be told off, whatever the case may be, when something happens, they're more likely to not tell you they've done it. Now, the problem then is, you know, even if they think they've inadvertently clicked a link, they've shared information, you know, whatever they think they're worried, in hindsight, you know, when they've actually given this information out and then they've retrospectively thought maybe this wasn't right, this wasn't the right person, we need a culture that actually enables them to come forward, to tell us what's going on, to report anything they deem as suspicious, to call out even to people in seniority. This is not the process, this is not the way you ask for me to do things, you know, and those type of things. So we actually have to have a positive culture around security awareness, and we also have to make sure that we're supporting the people should they fall foul to any of these scams and what's going on, because as we said, they are designed to do it. They're designed to try and get people to do things they wouldn't normally do, and therefore we have to be that safety net. But that's why we have to think about how we enable the technology in the background, again, that someone will click the link, someone will impersonate, they will spoof a domain, they will go to these great lengths to try and get people to do these activities. So can we utilize the technology, as we sort of said, to help with putting a lot of these policies in place to look for this anomalous behavior, to get the automatic blocking, to get these alerts in front of security operations, to do these investigations and do a lot of this activity, but also share much wider as well, because the more information we have with regards to these tactics, these techniques, and for us to do these investigations, it enables us to actually look at the indicators of compromise, look at what's new, as the things we've been talking about today, what's new, what's different, you know, what kind of tactics are they utilizing to evade that scanning technology. So something as simple as we said as having a password on a document, and then having the password in an email. Now, you were sort of saying we would never put the password in the email because it can be compromised by anybody. So it's the kind of like, well, then if someone has that kind of document, and with those type of emails with passwords that are included, again, it's an education that we can then give with regards to just getting people to think twice. But I think a lot of this comes down to just the enablement. As we sort of said, a lot of the stuff that's there isn't even being utilized. So there are a lot of quick wins, and it does all come down to the education, the culture, and just the way that we think about security end to end, I think.
Okay, I think we've got time for just one more. This is from Paul. Will Microsoft be contributing to the new online harms bill dialogue?
So I don't know the specifics of of what you're referring to, but in the UK, Microsoft is doing a lot of work with action fraud with regards to a lot of this taking down of infrastructure and those type of things. We've also committed on the back of a directive that came from the White House in July to take proactive action with regards to how big tech companies, how cloud service providers can actually help to take down the malicious infrastructure, to understand how a lot of these things work. Now, it's not just a cloud environment, as we sort of said. We've got the Office capability. We've also got Bing and the search engines and all of these things. We're automatically doing a lot of work in terms of doing that kind of child exploitation, looking for where a lot of the digital infrastructure is being utilized for nefarious purposes. And we're going to be extending and building that out. So I think it's all encompassed with regards to what you're talking about and what you're referring to. I'm not in a position to comment specifically on that one thing, but to sort of say Microsoft has committed over $20 billion over the next 5 years, specifically with regards to looking at the infrastructure, doing that sharing, looking at how we can disrupt the digital, the criminal infrastructures. But we are, back to the previous question that we had, also investing a lot with regards to awareness, recruitment, building the next kind of cyber skills into this sort of education system, through university, schooling, and those type of things. Because I think when we look at the scale of attack, and as I sort of said right at the beginning, when we're talking about just using that volume of telemetry signals that we're seeing and that exponential growth of devices and data and all sorts of things that's going on, we are going to need more people. So not just in security, but across that whole digital environment. And we've already got a skills gap, and we need to kind of plug that gap from a number of different perspectives. So that's within obviously the sort of traditional cybersecurity, like we might think about security operations, architecture, and design. But we also need to then have people who can build this kind of machine learning algorithms. We need risk, we need governance, we need compliance people, we need ex-law enforcement. And it sounds a bit of a cliche to say it, but we actually need those people who are coming from multiple different sectors, multiple different experiences, and the diversity of thought to really think outside the box. Because if the attackers are coming up with all these weird and wonderful ways of attacking us, we need to do the same from a defender's perspective to try and almost kind of think about how could they get access, what could we do about it, how do we educate, how do we improve all of these things combined. So it's a kind of, again, it's a multifaceted answer to what you asked me, but I just want to give the assurance that actually there's a lot of work that Microsoft in particular is doing, but also I know that our other cloud service providers, so Amazon and Google, have also committed resource and capability into this as well.
Okay, great. Well, we don't have time for more questions, but I believe you're returning very soon. So I'll hand over to Dalim now.
Thank you.
Sarah, thank you very much. you have again shown why you're one of the most influential and inspiring women in cybersecurity. But let me cancel out one of those words in women, replace that by people, because you really are. And so many of the things you've said have resonated, that not only has this been a really great video we'll have soon to reflect back on, sort of look at different parts of, you've covered so much ground, but also some of those things you've been saying about needing more people, needing more skills, spreading the education, looking after young people. We really want to learn more about that and do more about that with you. And what we've done in our little groups, Central and North London branches of BCS, is started a new initiative, and this is your fault. It's called Secure IT. That's the initiative, and the things you've done in terms of ransomware in this session, we will hook onto that, but also the things you mentioned about the links you're going to give us and so on, those would sit very nicely in there. I also want to put another dimension to it. There are lots of people who reach a midlife, mid-career period, and they think, right, everyone's shouting about cybersecurity. How do I get into that? I think it's not easy, but I would really like to share a dialogue with you sometime about that. And especially women, children have grown up, keep hearing all this stuff about cybersecurity, and I want to look after my children. How do I do it? Especially people who don't have IT skills. There's the huge pool of talent that we are not making use of, but really wants to help society, and so do we. So can we work together on that, please?
How can I say no? No, absolutely, of course. No, it's such an important area, and I think we really do have to think about, as you sort of said, that cross-skilling, where we can get the people in and how we can get people excited about security, and not just look at it from a negative perspective, but really think about, you know, cybersecurity really is built into everything that we're doing, and it's really an enterprise level. So no longer is it the confines of IT. It really is an organizational size topic, and I think there's just so much opportunity for people to be able to contribute to that, no matter where they've come from and where their skill set is.
Absolutely. Applause to you, Sarah. Thank you very much again, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.